Ideas order than words. Ideas order than words. And the premise is just like, get all the ideas out first. Don't worry about where they go or that they fit or that they make sense. Just get them all out. Just get them out on paper.
What's up, people? You're listening to A Quick Read, an advertising podcast that talks book smarts and street smarts with the people who have been there, done that. Today's guest is creative director Jaime Cabrera, who hosts Confessions of a Creative Director. We battle it out in the war of art and find out our real foe is fear. You know what to do. Tune in and turn up. Yo, 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 what's up, Jaime? How you doing, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing good, man. You're on the West Coast time, right? It's you're just finishing up work now, right?
West Coast. I'm in the LBC.
Nice.
Me and Snoop. Yeah, it's 4:15, so it's not quite the end of the day, but getting close.
How is Snoop doing? Is he doing all right over there?
Yeah, I think he's doing okay. You know, I haven't talked to him in a minute. I did see some. My kid showed me something the other day where apparently Snoop got really upset while playing Madden and had a little bit of a meltdown. So,
oh man, he raged.
He needs to take his meds.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. So we've hung out a little bit online, but I kind of just reached out to you because I saw your podcast. I saw you were in a similar space. I thought it looked cool. You're kind of doing some similar things to what I'm doing on the podcast. And I said, man, this could be a great interview. Let's chat about this. So I reached out and you responded.
Oh, absolutely, man. I love getting the outreach from folks who have heard about or listened to the podcast, and then we jumped on a video call, and it was like we were brothers from a different mother, right? It's like you got the creative director glasses, I got the creative director glasses. I think yours were clear though, and I had the black frames, and we had the standard creative director T-shirt on. I'm like, I like this guy. I like this guy.
We clearly have checked the box on the stereotype.
I've always thought I keep telling myself that I'm going to open a store called Creative Directors Warehouse and sell nothing but black T-shirts, black frame glasses, black Chuck Taylors.
Yeah, and
just
you got to have like the little field notebooks, and you got to have like your pen and like that sort of thing. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
I think it'll work.
I think it would work. So we chatted it out and we said, yeah, let's do this. And so what's really exciting for the listeners is this is a 2-for-1. So you're on my podcast right now, but later on, I'm going into your world.
Yeah, you're going to come on and you better start thinking about your confession because two things actually. You got to prepare a drink because we have cocktails on the show. So I'd love to hear what you're drinking, if you have a special recipe. And then the second part, paying off the title of the show, which is Confessions of a Creative Director. I want to hear you need to get something off your chest. This is a good time to do it, creatively speaking. Okay.
So we're going to
got some pretty good ones on the show.
We're going to get into my deepest, darkest creative secrets. All right. I love that.
Yes.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. But today I've got you on my show. And what's unique about my show is we pick a book and we talk about that book and how that's affected our career. So you chose a book called The War of Art. Tell me why you chose that.
Yeah, I mean, it was this great book that I read during a program that I did called the Alt MBA, Seth Godin's Alt MBA. This is another commonality that we had. I found out that you did it as well, but this was one of the first books that we read in that program, which is really sort of a mini MBA. You have to write a bunch of responses to these prompts and really get into it's kind of part group therapy, part MBA. But this is one of the first books that we read, and it really struck a chord with me because of what it said, right, and what it talks about, which is really just this idea that our fears are what hold us back creatively.
Oh man, I feel like it's already starting to get heavy.
it's going to get heavy.
Here we are talking about our fears already. This is bringing back nightmares of the alt MBA program that Seth Godin puts on. You think you're going in to like build up your career, but the whole program is designed to just tear you down and like make you realize that like who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely some moments where I was like, huh. Yeah, you did definitely get some things out there, and you know, you get to meet a bunch of people from all around the world, really accomplished people of all different kind of walks of life, and doing all kinds of really interesting work. So it was humbling as well, just to see like, wow, there's a lot of really smart people on this planet.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it was definitely a great experience, and but before we jump into that, how did you get into advertising? Did you just show up on the beach out there in Long Beach and say, here I am and let's make some commercials? Or how'd that work?
No. I mean, I have kind of a long, circuitous route to getting to where, you know, what I'm doing now. So I'm from Texas. I grew up in El Paso. I don't know if you guys have heard of that town, your listeners, but a little West Texas town, not that little, I guess, pretty big. But I grew up there and then went to school at the University of Texas, studied radio, television, and film, moved back to El Paso for a number of years and started working, you know, grunt work, you know, being a PA on commercials and films that came to town. Then that led to a job in TV. I started editing news and working in the promotions department of a TV station. And then that led to this opening. Somebody knew that I, you know, had a degree in radio, television, film, had a interest in doing this sort of thing, and had figured out that I kind of liked, you know, promotions and advertising and things like that. Somebody offered me a job at an agency called the Laster Group. And boom, that's where, you know, sort of the love affair started with advertising and marketing in general. So I started copywriting, and then before I knew it, I was like directing the commercials as well. So I did that for probably about, I think it was 3 or 4 years. And then this whole time, I really had this thought that I was going to be a rock and roll star. So I was also performing and writing music and things like that. Moved to LA thinking that was going to be my life. I still kept, you know, doing the marketing and advertising on the side, writing spots and things like that. Got a job at Time Warner, then moved to Jack Morton, which does experiential marketing, and then started Advantage, which was another experiential and sponsorship consulting agency. And then we recently merged with this really awesome agency called RNC PMK, which is really a cultural powerhouse. We do everything from influencer marketing to content to, you know, just about everything, branding work. So that's sort of been my route into, you know, this crazy business.
Yeah, that's a journey. And so there again, me and you have an overlap where our origin story starts as filmmakers. So you're one of the only other ECDs who's a filmmaker, right? Like most of the time it's like, oh, I'm a writer, I'm a designer. But here we are, 2 filmmakers that are in this crazy creative director role.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't. I'm sure I'm nowhere in the same you know, league as you. I sort of I never did anything you know, full feature film or anything like that. But it was always my passion just to create content, to film things, music videos, and, you know, commercials, obviously. But maybe someday I'll direct something big like you do. But yeah, it was definitely, it's been super helpful in my career, obviously, because I moved into creating commercials first and foremost, but just the thinking, just the process, just the planning that it takes to you know, create a filmed piece, a content piece, really has applications in pretty much anything that you do in terms of creativity. So it was super useful, and you have to really move quickly, right? Or typically you have to move very quickly through the process. So it's been helpful in every facet of my, you know, marketing and advertising career.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the some of what you're talking about there is, you know, moving fast and getting, you know, moving forward with projects and sort of navigating all that. You know, one of the big ideas from the book that sort of stuck out to me is this idea of resistance. Resistance is internal, insidious and recruits allies. And I think oftentimes in the creative field, we find ourselves bumping up in and against this sort of resistance, of what we think we can achieve and who we think we are and those sort of things. So, in your career, have you felt that resistance? And for you, has it been internal? What was it about this section of the book that really spoke to you or challenged you?
I mean, the resistance really is, what they call the lizard brain, right? It's your sort of your caveman brain that's trying to protect you, right? So it introduces these ideas into your head that are trying to keep you from getting hurt, whether that's physically or emotionally or whatever it might be. So it's that little voice that says you can't do that. You shouldn't start this. You shouldn't go for that job. You're not gonna get it, or it's gonna be super hard, or you're not qualified, or it says, yeah, you should forget about writing songs. It's never gonna go anywhere. Who cares? It's that kind of fear thing that just pops into your head and keeps you from creating, which is really as creative people, that's what we're put on this earth to do, is to create. But that thing pops in, that lizard brain, that resistance, that insecurity, whatever you want to call it. It has a number of names. That's what keeps you, from really creating and kind of living up to your potential. And it's insidious. I mean, it really is everywhere. And the weird thing is that in some cases it recruits allies. And and this is directly from the book, but it's super true, is that you'll notice that when you start kind of growing and you start taking on those fears head on, it now starts to manifest in other people, and they're projecting their fears onto you, right? It's like, oh, do you really want to go for that job? I don't know, man. I don't know if you can, are you really qualified? Should you really be spending so much time writing songs? I mean, shouldn't you be, you have kids, shouldn't be spending more time. It starts to project on they start to project their fears on you. So it sort of recruits these allies. It's really weird. And, somebody once told me that, be careful who you share your dreams with, because sometimes those fears, get projected onto you from other people. So yeah, it's kind of weird. It's strange the way that works.
Did you find yourself bumping into the resistance when you decided to launch the podcast? I think, as we were talking and catching up, that, sort of during these COVID, the COVID era, so to speak, is when you sort of jumped in and said, I think I'm going to do this. And I know it's been really, it's been food for your soul, so to speak, to do the podcast during these times, is, some of the stuff I was hearing you talk about. So, did you bump into that? Did you bump into that resistance? Were you hesitant to do a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I bump into the resistance. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't, bump into it frequently, right? I'm probably not on a daily basis, but you run into it, over the course of, a month or a year or whatever. It's always sort of there. You always have to keep battling it and pushing it back. But I had been talking about doing this podcast for a while, right? I said, I want to do this. I want to try it. And I kept coming up with excuses. Oh, I just when it settles down a little bit at work, I'll jump into it. And I was like, I don't have the gear. I'm going to need to get a microphone. I'll wait. It's all those excuses and those procrastinations. That's all fear. And so when I did the Alt MBA and I started learning about this stuff, I said, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. Just do it. What's the worst that can happen? And you know what? When I decided that, it all came together in a matter of a couple of days. I talked to a friend of mine who was doing a podcast. He told me, you're going to need a service to host it. You're going to need this. You're going to need that. And I was like, check, check, check. I went online. I signed up for whatever I needed. And then I just said, I reached out to a friend and said, hey, I want you to be my first guest. And I just did it. I just shipped it, right? I just got it done.
Yeah, you got to ship the work, man.
Yeah, you got to ship the work. That's what we do. So I just did it. And then at that same time, I had also been talking about doing this song club. I'm a songwriter. A friend of mine, we had been talking about launching this song club that's kind of mirrored around one of our songwriting heroes. He does this, and we put out a song a week. We put out a prompt. Somebody comes up with a word or a phrase or an idea, and then everybody's got to go off and write a song, do a rough demo recording, and present it at the end of the week. So I launched that, and we're, I think this week we're going to be at song number 48 or 49. So
Wow.
It's just do it is really as corny as it sounds. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. So I think, those people listening, maybe you've got something you've been working on. Maybe you want to do a podcast. You're trying to write a book. You're maybe thinking about reaching out and applying for a job, and you're hesitant. That's the resistance. Right. That's the resistance speaking to you. It's trying to hold you down. It's trying to keep you from becoming the person that you are. And what Jaime just pointed out is the only way through is you gotta make it happen. You just gotta, what we call, ship the work. And so for those of you who've never heard that phrase, Seth Godin is a great marketer and writer, but he also is really good at getting people to get beyond themselves and get beyond their roadblocks. And as he designed the Alt MBA program that both me and Jaime went through, part of that philosophy is this, what we call the ship it philosophy. And so it's this idea that you can have the best idea, you can have the best intention, you can have it all written down, you can have the business plan, you can have all the pieces to the puzzle. But if you never put them out there, if you never ship it, it never manifests. It never gets out to the world. And so that's what we're talking about. And so just want to encourage you listeners that, maybe right now is an integral moment. Maybe you happen chanced upon this podcast. You happen chanced upon this episode. Maybe it was destiny. And I just want to say right now, I'm going to speak the truth into your life right now on behalf of Jaime and myself, who have both experienced this. Ship the freaking work, man. Just do the thing. Yeah. Send that Instagram post, write that blog. You got this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you'd be surprised how receptive people are to it. And you're going to feel, especially if you're a creative person, you'll feel super accomplished. I mean, when I do a podcast, when I finish up a song, I'm like on cloud 9 because I got something done and I put it out into the world. Yeah. And I exposed it to the world, and you get feedback. You get, people love people that create things. And so I think you'll find that you'll get rewarded for it. And you'll also find like, that wasn't so hard. That wasn't so hard. And, hopefully you can build on it,
Yeah. Well, that leads us to another big idea in the book is almost the opposite force, right? And it's written as invoking the muse. As you've decided to sort of, as you think back on your career, we talked about the podcast a little bit, but when you think back on your career, can you pull out an example where invoking the muse really manifested itself in your career, maybe early on in your career or whatnot? What's maybe a story there that is interesting?
Yeah, let me think about that, about invoking the muse. I mean, I don't know that I knew what it was maybe at the time until I did some of this work and reading these materials. But I would imagine maybe not in my, probably in the writing of, TV spots or radio spots or jingles. I used to love to do jingles, and I'm sure the muse visited me then, but I probably would make a more recent connection to just the songwriting part. And I know I'm sort of mixing and jumping around here in my different worlds here, but often what I found with my songwriting is that I had this, and this is also resistance coming in. I had this need to have the songs make sense or to resolve or to come to some sort of happy ending or it all comes together, and it would hinder my work. It would take me in a direction that maybe I didn't want to go, but in my mind, I'm like, well, I gotta resolve this for the listener. And then I finally said, you know what? I don't need to do that. The work can just stand on its own. People can interpret it however they want, and I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to let the muse take me wherever it wants to go, Yeah. And I've written songs that I played for my wife, and she'll say, "Well, what does this mean?" And I said, "I don't know. I just let go to the muse, and I didn't let the fear of like, well, that's a weird thing to say, or that's a weird word, or that's a weird phrase to end on, or why did you do that, or." and I just let the muse sort of drive my thinking, and I try to also bring that into my work. It's a little bit different because we typically have some constraints that we have to deal with, but it's still applicable, right? Because you just let's just see where this plays out. Let me just write and see where it leads me, and then you can go back and edit and shape it into what you need it to be. But
yeah, no, and I think just like songwriting, same's true about creative, right? Like when we work with our teams, as creative directors, I like to think that again, my background's not a writer, my background's not a designer. I'm not the best writer or designer or strategist in the agency, but I can sort of feel that muse energy, right? Like I know when somebody's onto something, and I think that's a big deal for creative directors. Like our job is to provoke and to inspire. It's to see a kernel of an idea, a little seedling, and to sort of like help water it and bring out the bigger idea or the more interesting perspective, right? So I think in a lot of ways, I feel like I get to be sort of like the wingman of the muse a little bit as a creative director. Would you agree with that? Kind of like breathing that sort of breath of encouragement and energy into things that we think have like potential?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably a big part of what we do, and recognizing it, encouraging your team to also sort of think in this way, right? So there's another word for it, right? It's the genius, right? People think that it means, or that's what it's come to mean, right? It's like someone is a genius, but back in the day, it was almost like this alternate being that sat next to you, and the genius was what was creating that piece of music, or the genius was the thing that was creating this work. It just sort of comes through you, right? So maybe there's an element of helping your creative team kind of work outside of themselves and just let go to this, and this sounds, as I'm saying this, I feel like, somebody's going to call and have me committed, but, kind of giving them permission to like, just let this other thing come in and just let's see where it goes. So, I definitely think that's a big part of what we do is recognizing it, encouraging it, trying to stoke it, right? Yeah. Because you have to remember that they're probably also having some of these other, resistance issues themselves. Like, I don't want to share that idea because they're going to think that it's stupid. Well, you didn't share that idea. Let the genius share the idea. let the muse, you know what I mean? It kind of like, I didn't, I'm not saying that. It just came out, it's that kind of thing, giving yourself permission to maybe think or say things that you maybe wouldn't before.
I love that idea. Love that idea about blame it on the muse. That's not my idea.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to explore things and say things that maybe you wouldn't. I like that. That's a nice
it's like an alter ego. It's like an alter ego, right? It's almost even probably, sort of what actors or comedians or whatever, it's sort of an alter ego character kind of thing, maybe, So, yeah.
Interesting concept. Have anything, I think a lot of times, to let that muse do its work, it's, you gotta step away. Do you have anything that you do or you encourage your teams to do? Like, let's say you're workshopping an idea, right? You got people in the writer's room. People are in the writer's room and you're workshopping an idea, right? So let's, for whatever reason, you're doing it for a pack of gum. Doesn't matter. You guys are workshopping this pack of gum and you got ideas on the board and you've got you've hit it all. Sticky, chewy, you've got all the flavors, the whole nine. And what do you guys do to sort of like step away and allow that sort of subconscious muse to work? What are some of your favorite things to do? Some people, do something as simple as just go take a walk, but do you have anything that you like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I like, obviously I like to take a walk, and then things have been different because of COVID, right? But definitely taking a walk, making something, making yourself a cocktail or making, and obviously that's hard to do if you're not with your team right now, but just sort of stepping away and doing something different.
Yeah.
I also, obviously I love music, so I also sometimes just will put on some music and just kind of try to tune out for a little bit, just to let the mind sort of relax and wander a little bit and get your mind off of it. So those are typically the things that I like to do. A good tequila cocktail goes a long way in sort of getting you re-energized and maybe looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, man. No, I think that's great. I think the other thing I find a lot of times is I know a lot of creatives are just like they can't turn off the creative. So like sometimes just switching your like outlet. So you're like working, if you're working on a project and then you need to just take a break, but maybe shift that energy over to, like you said, your songwriting, or shift that energy over to, some sort of, craft work that you're doing, or, whatnot. You're still making and creating, but it's a different muscle, and you're kind of shifting that energy. And so, next, maybe building Legos, so you go off and you build some Legos and you design like a house with Legos. And then next thing you know, boom, there it is. The idea hits you, the muse brings you back, and then you jump in the other room.
Yeah, you hit on something also that you're right. With adding some kind of physicality to it also can help. So we used to do that in the past, where we had a big collection of Legos and we would build things, and working in experiential, which we do quite a bit of, and used to do a lot of, before COVID. That's helpful because you're building structures, but just in general, introducing some sort of physicality, whether that's, getting Post-it notes and turning them into something, or whatever it is. I think just, kind of disengaging from that kind of mental space and engaging in some other sort of creative space can sometimes help kind of get you out of that log jam.
Yeah. And I think too, like, it's not all just like muse and magic and sort of like immovable forces against you, right? Like the next big idea of the book that I appreciate is just be a pro. This idea of just be a pro, you know what I mean? And a pro shows up and does their thing, right? So if you're a writer, just show up and just write. Like, are you writing? Then you know what I mean? Like, that's why you don't have any ideas, because you're not writing. If you're a designer, like, if your artboards and Illustrator aren't just full of imagery and stuff, like, you're not designing. You're just sitting there, right? So like, be a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's sort of like the expression, right? It's the harder I work, the luckier I get, or whatever. It's true for this. And there's a great quote in the book, right? Somebody says, I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9:00 sharp, or something like that. Meaning the inspiration strikes because I get my butt to work and I get down there. Look, is that going to work all the time? Maybe there's some days where you literally cannot do that for whatever reason. But I found that just sitting down and doing the work is the best way to sort of invite the muse in, right? Is just getting down to it and just start doing it. Again, we sometimes think things have to make sense right off the bat. Maybe they don't. Maybe you just, start writing down the ideas first. So I went through this other training on it was a writing workshop, and I kind of came up as a writer. And the person that put on the class did this really great mnemonic device, which is they sang it to the White Stripes song. It's escaping me. Seven Nation Army, right? And it was like idea, And the line goes, ideas order than words. Ideas order than words. And the premise is just like, get all the ideas out first. Don't worry about where they go, or that they fit, or that they make sense. Just get them all out. Just get them out on paper.
I love that.
Then you go back.
Yeah,
it's a great device. And then you go back and then you start rearranging them in whatever order seems to really work. And then you get down to really finessing and editing and all that. But it's that kind of thinking, right? And it probably, I'm not a designer either, but probably the same thing goes for design. It's like, just get the ideas out. Maybe they don't make sense to you right off the bat. Maybe you're going to have to flip the paper around to look at it backwards and something gets revealed to you. But I just find that when you sit down and start generating and working, then the muse shows up and says, "Hey, what are you doing? Can I help?"
My art director is he always says, he just says things like, get just start to build some universes, and then once you got some things looking interesting, like just start like throw it to like what looks good on a poster, like what throw it all together on a screen. What would be a cool screen printed poster, and stick it on the wall. And if it's cool, like then there's something interesting happening, right? And then you start to like shape it. So that maybe is like a visual like version of the ideas, order, and words, right? Like maybe it's like these images, and then kind of put it into something that's visually appealing, like a piece of art on the wall, right? If it can live as a piece of art on the wall, then something's happening that's good. And then take that and start to give it strategy, and start to give it like a way forward. But I love that, man. That's an interesting thought. So talking about the war of art, here's a question for you. Can you ever really win the war of art, or is it only small battles over time? Or do you ever win? How do you win? Can you win? Have you won?
I kind of have resigned myself to the fact that and this is my opinion. I'm sure everybody's maybe has a different point of view, but I don't think you're never going to achieve perfection on anything, really. I mean, all you can really hope to do is show up and do it better each time, and maybe sometimes you take a step back, but all you can do is really try to do it better and better and better and better, and learn learn from mistakes and stuff. I don't think you ever really get to perfection, and maybe if you did, that old kind of idea that you never die in your dreams, because if you do die in dreams, then you're going to die in real life, or something like that. Maybe that's the kind of idea. If like you ever get to true perfection, then maybe you just keel over immediately. But I just think it's a lifelong process, and I don't think you ever completely defeat it, or you never it's always it's going to be a battle, and maybe sometimes the battle is there's a ceasefire for a couple of weeks, and then something comes up, and then you start to have that doubt, is anybody listening to the podcast? Should I keep going? Haven't heard anything from any, and then you just gotta push through it. So,
well, and I think too, like the idea that like, wars, we always, people want to use war metaphors. It's easy. We know it. It's part of our culture, but no one really wins a war, right? You only survive one,
Yeah.
No one wins. No one wants to see other families destroyed and that sort of thing. Same way in art. Like we don't want to see our peers do bad. Like I don't want you to be, not be successful. It's I don't, and it's not that and so I think it's this idea of like, I like the thing I like about this conversation is like, if you're going to survive, right? If you're going to survive in this industry that's, all about, can you come up with the next genius idea? Like, maybe you can, maybe you won't, but can you survive by continually showing up and doing the work and bringing forward ideas that are interesting, strategic, helpful to the client? Yeah, I think you can. And I think maybe, I'm just making this up on the fly here, but I'm feeling good about it right now. Feeling good, Jaime. I think maybe that surviving is really, that's the point, right? Like being able to, at the end of your career, looking back and say, you know what, man, I made it.
Yeah.
Like
survive in advance.
I did some things. We had some moments, we had some tears, but here I am, and it's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, and I think that I think it it also kind of keeps you motivated, because you keep striving to do better, and you keep wanting to work towards that elusive perfection, but you keep working towards it, right? So if you really got there, that'd be kind of boring, because it'd be like, oh, now what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I always find that myself at that place. Whenever I get to a now what, it's time to wrap it up. Like it's time to move on to the next project. So
absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about this podcast. Let's dig in. I know I listened recently, and her name's escaping me, but you had a strategist on recently who was really good. She was really good, and she was talking about how she was speculating that maybe after COVID, like some people might not want to be touched. Some people might not want to be approached. Some people
Yeah.
might not want to go back to this interactive world. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting insight. So, but stuff like that's kind of what, you're bringing on interesting, compelling creatives from all over and different agencies and whatnot, and fresh voices, and really love what you're doing there. So tell us a little bit about your format there. How do you get those confessions out of your guests? What kind of stuff are you looking for? What are you bringing to the world?
And maybe you find this with this podcast is that I'm getting a ton out of it as well. I'm learning sort of trade secrets. I'm also it's also a therapy, because it's like, hey, I'm not the only one that has these fears, right? I want to say that probably almost everybody on the podcast has talked about imposter syndrome, right? And it's something that's another form of resistance, right? So it's kind of like part therapy. It's part like masterclass, because you're learning from these people, and then it's part like you're discovering stuff together. So I just try to again let it take. I have a set of kind of standard questions, but then I do like you're doing, right? Just sort of see where the conversation takes us, try to find connection points and bring them all together. And then I would say that I just try to make the guests comfortable so that they feel, they feel relaxed and they're able to share their confessions. Nobody has ever gotten too crazy with their confession. I think my first guest, John Eric, talked about showing up to a pitch meeting high or something. That was pretty good. But a lot of them have had to do with imposter syndrome, or like going, man, should I be am I qualified to be talking about this, or having some sort of self-doubt during a pitch and things like that. So
yeah, that does seem to be like one of the most consistent things throughout our industry, and that is really something that I've heard time and time again. And if we go to conferences, we do those sort of things, and you got these speakers at well-named ad agencies. They get up there and they say, they confess those same things. They say, look, I don't have it all figured out, and I have these same feelings, and I think it's just part of surviving the war of art, right? Like just being vulnerable to the fact that, like, we're all one step away from just not being as sharp as we once were, not feeling as confident as we once were, and it's a struggle, that you got to kind of really work through.
Yeah, and as that we've talked about this on the show as well, that as you move up, from being a doer, right? So you're writing, or you're designing or whatever, and you start moving towards being a sort of a manager, right? A creative director. You become the coach, right? You go from being sort of the star player, so to speak, to being the coach, and it's a transition for a lot of people, right? Because they love being the person that came up with the solution.
I wrote that. I designed that. That's my line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I said it. Everybody, and so you start to move to this other place where you're the manager. You're the but there's a lot of creativity and a lot of skill and a lot of real strategy that goes into that part, because if a project was successful, chances are it's because it was successful because you chose the right people to lead the creative. You were able to, as you mentioned earlier, find that one, somebody said something in the meeting and you said, hey, say that again. And then you went up to the board and you wrote that out, and then that ended up being the idea, right? So you're moving in a different direction. You didn't have that idea, somebody else did, but you realized that it was good and it was smart, and you were the person that put together the ideation session because you knew that, Charlie or whoever was going to be good on this project. So it becomes a different type of creativity, and you become really sort of a coach, and that's hard for a lot of people to let go, right? Being the star player. But that's the way, that's the way it goes. And that's, typically you want to be moving in that direction. At least I think so. I still have, I think, ideas that are really strong and worth sharing, and I still share them and all that, but it's about the next generation, right? How do you get them to, get their stuff out, and how do you get them to grow, and
Yeah. Let the young ones get on the front lines. Let them take the shrapnel.
Exactly.
Sit back and strategize, right?
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm so proud to be in the trenches with you as a fellow creative director and podcaster. And this is hopefully the beginning of a great friendship. I know it feels like that on my end, and I can't wait to come on your show and get to be in the hot seat. But as far as people finding you, how can they get a hold of you? How do they get to your show? How do they work with you? All that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the show is available anywhere podcasts are available, which I love saying, by the way, right? Because it makes me feel so legitimate. Because that's what everybody says. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcast. So, Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, Confessions of a Creative Director, just do a search for that. And then the best way, I started a website for it, but it's hard for me to keep up with it. So the best way to get in touch with me is just really through LinkedIn. Shoot me a note like you did. And just to touch on what you said, I'm totally with you, man. I feel like we're kindred spirits, in a lot of ways. Yeah, totally. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, as they say, and I hope we can, kind of commiserate and spitball, and who knows? I mean, you never know. Maybe we end up working together in some capacity in the future. So thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man. Well, I can tell you this much: when this COVID stuff's over, you mentioned Long Beach, and if me and you aren't eating donuts at what's his name shop there, the one featured in Snoop Dogg's video with the big donut.
Oh, are you talking about Randy's donut?
Yeah,
Donuts,
if me and you aren't at Randy's eating a donut, like something's wrong. Okay,
come, bring it, man, bring it. I'll show you I'll definitely show you the town, and we'll go up to the offices up in Century City, and we'll hang out in Long Beach and everywhere in between. But yeah, absolutely, I'd love that.
Awesome. Now let me ask you this. Now, I know this is big in California. I don't know if you ride much, but do you skateboard at all?
I don't skateboard. I scooter though.
Okay.
Which is probably not that cool sibling of skateboarding, but it's pretty awesome. I got this big Razor. I think it's like the Lux something or other, but it's a big size one. And me and actually the four of us, my wife and my two boys, all have scooters. And what we do is we pack them up in the car. We go somewhere cool and then
cruise.
just cruise everywhere. And it's so much fun. But yeah, the skateboarding, I probably would have gotten into that too late and broke my ankle or something. But
well, if you make it here to Cincinnati, we'll bring your scooter and you can roll with my squad. We got a little squad called the Dad Skate Squad, and we roll pretty deep here in Cincinnati. We got about 50 dads, and we roll every Wednesday night.
That's rad.
During the summer,
really
every
cool.
Wednesday night we roll for about an hour and then end up grabbing a beer somewhere. And I think we've actually started a chapter out in LA. I'm not sure if it's still
Is
going.
that right?
Yeah, so I'll try to connect the dots, and then maybe again, as soon as we get through this, get everybody vaccinated, I'll fly out and roll with the LA crew. You bring the scooter, and we'll have one heck of a time.
I love it, man. I definitely would love that. Yeah. Yes.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Well, that sounds like a ton of fun. Thanks again for hopping on the show. It really means a lot. Those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, you know what to do as always. Subscribe, rate, review, do all that stuff so people can find our show. And then go check out Jaime's podcast, Confessions of a Creative Director. And again, I'm gonna spread that love. Give him some ratings and reviews and subscribing. For those of you that enjoy podcasts, just so you know, whenever you do that, it helps us get visibility. So it makes that podcast be more visible in the podcast directories whenever there's more ratings and reviews and subscriptions. So if you're enjoying it and you want the rest of the world to enjoy it, please help us out and do that. And as always, man, love you guys. You're the best listeners ever. And Jaime, hey, we're going to eat donuts. We're going to ride skateboards. It's going to be a beautiful thing. Yeah,
and get ready for my podcast. I'm going to put something special together for you.
All right, man.
We're gonna go deep. We're gonna go real deep. But yeah, I can't wait to have you on the show. I think we're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna turn the mic on you and see what that experience is like. It's a different experience. It's a lot of fun, but it definitely is different. But I think the audience is gonna really. My guess is they're gonna learn a lot about you and a lot about sort of your secret sauce. So I can't wait to have you on the show, man.
Oh man, well I will bring all the confessions. I'm an open book, so let's get it out, and it'll be a fun time. And yeah, man, super awesome, and really appreciate you, buddy. And keep doing your thing, fight the resistance, invoke the muse, and at the end of the day, man, do what you do, which is be a pro, buddy.
Love it. All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
All right. Peace.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, head over to iTunes or Spotify and give us a great rating and review. A Quick Read is a Leap Group podcast.